How do you match if you have a lot of research, but again, you don't have enough USCE? So what do you do?
So I want to go around the virtual table and ask each of you, uh, how did you balance either lack of USCE or too much research or less research? So, whatever your profile, let's go around the table. And Sameer, let's start with you. How did you balance this research, USCE? I know you were researching. So
Okay.
in the
Yeah,
interviews, how did you balance?
I started the year by doing 3 months of observership, and then I started the research in April. I kind of balanced both of them, but no one has really asked about the observership or paid attention to it. Most of the questions and the topics were related to what I'm doing now in the research, and I noticed that the research, knowing that the interview is a chance to know who you are, the research provided a good material for talking and saying more about who I am and what I can do and how I can manage a long-term work project. And that's in terms of the balance between them. And I guess that's it for the research.
Yeah, thank you.
I also
Fran?
did, like Cheyenne did, that I also went a couple of times to the clinics, but I did not really set it as a separate experience. I included it in the research experience.
Yeah. Francis, how did you balance, USCE or lack of it and your prior experience and research? I think you had a lot of it.
Yeah, I have a different story in this matter with the U.S. clinical experience, because when I was doing my fellowship in my home country, I came to the U.S. for 9 months and pretty much doing hands-on experiences at the time in my field. And my first time applying, I thought, well, that's still valid. That was 2008, right, 9 months. And during the time that I was here, I was teaching in college. And during that time in college, I had the opportunity to do some research with the students. But, before I get to be involved with Usmle CV, I didn't think in my mind, this is how lost I was, about like, you have to renew this, you have to go again and contact your peers, your network from those times, and go back into do something more clinical. So I reached out and then went back to do more U.S. clinical experience in local hospitals and then back in the universities where I was before. And ended up landing 6 months research that I'm doing right now in the clinic as well. So I think that for me personally, honestly, with all due respect to the research people, I'm more a clinical person. I really love the interaction with patients, and during my interviews, I try to focus my attention on that. And I think that one is weakness when we practice during the interviews. Even if I was doing this research, I was very shy because I didn't feel confident about it. And I still remember in my mind, I said, you have to sell this like this is something that's going to change the world. And I remember when that was approached to me in the interviews, that's the way I do it, right? Even if I don't feel like that's my strength. My strength is kind of, well, I remember for one in my mind saying, you have to tell this like this is going to change the world, and that's how I felt it, even if I was just working on that. So I think that to me personally, it works out to balance what my strength was, which is the clinic, and go for it. But also, listen, to everyone who has the opportunity to go into research, do it, because I think that's a good backup in case that they approach you with the question, are you interested in that? Because everybody has a different interest, and I mean, it's our responsibility to create knowledge, right? So I think that's something that if you can get it, also go for it, but also sell it, okay? Whatever they ask you, try to sell it in the interview. I think that was I want mine, because I still remember that advice from him. That was one thing that really helped me a lot.
Thank you. Roshan, you also did quite a bit of research, right?
Yeah, so I did around 2 years of research. It's basic, pure basic science research. And that's
So
another reason I managed
tell
in.
us what were the challenges? I mean, basic science, how did you sell it in the interviews and convince them that you actually can do clinical stuff in the residency?
Yeah, that was the question they asked me basically. So basic science research, there is no clinical contact, but I
Right.
still did some shadowing on weekends. It was really difficult and to manage both research and clinical experience. But for pediatric neurology, they are looking for an academic physician. So for an academic physician, you need a strong research background. And also, it was really fun doing the interview because I was talking about the experiments which I was doing. I said I was studying autism and started talking about brains, and it was really good for me to initiate conversation, and it was a really good conversation. And basic science research is not, it's completely different from clinical research, and it's all experiment. I do work with mice. And to answer to your question, yeah, it was difficult for me to manage both clinical experience and also research, but I somehow did it because I didn't match last year, so I need to do something different. So I did work 7 days a week. So I did on weekends. I'd go and work in the local hospitals. I just shadow attending. So that's how I managed research on USCE. And definitely research is a good topic during your interviews, especially it creates a long-term plan. For example, if you want to be an academic physician, definitely you want to do research in your field. So it shows that, okay, you are ready for next 10 years. So you want to do academic physician, not just in a rural area or something. So because most of the people doesn't know, there's a thing called O1 visa. Some of the IMGs also get O1 visa after residency, which is a way to stay in academic setting. So I thought of going in that way. So research basically is a good thing in your CV. You can talk a lot into your program. And managing research, exams, if you have CK, that's going to be difficult, but with clinical experience and research, your CV looks really good. And you can talk a lot with programs.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah, so I also had quite a bit of research in USC as well. I had about 6 months of USC and about 1 year of research, and together we managed about 7 publications. So I think whatever you have on CV, the more you have is better, the more the merrier, as they say. But it's important to direct it in a way so that people would understand. For example, if you have a program which is a university program and you are interviewing there, it's important to direct it how you say about your research. So you say about your hypothesis, how you thought, what were the analysis and stuff like that. But when it comes to community programs, where, such as my example, most of my interviews were in a community program. So I was asked a lot of things about research, about what I did. So what I did was directed towards how it will be helpful in clinical setting. So I would say that these QI projects help me to understand how the research can help in clinical settings, how these QI projects will help me to, make patients understand the benefits of research and what were the results, and this is how we should do. That's the essence of evidence-based medicine, that the years of research has been used in clinical settings. So I think for me, what was important was to say during the interviews and express how the research helped me, either is in a university setting, on a clinical setting, or on a community-based setting. So I think that was the most important thing, and Sarthi team helped me, forming my answers in a way that I can express my research in these programs. So I think that helped.
Thank you. Namit, are you still on?
Yeah, so for me, it was actually a little different story. I had more USC than research when I applied. I actually recently joined my research position. It's just been a couple of months when I had to send out my application. So for me, I had already about 12 months of USCE, but because I was applying for neurology, which is a more academically oriented field, even a little bit of research was talked about a lot in my interviews, because most of my interviews were university-based programs, so people were interested in what my ongoing projects were. And publications are definitely important, but even your current research, whatever you're doing, is of value and is a point that interviewers touch upon, because they want to know what you're doing. Talking about your research gives you a lot of things to talk about. When you're saying that, okay, I'm just doing an observership, it's like, okay, yeah, I'm just doing an observership in this. It's not as interesting to the interviewers as is research, because you're applying to the same field as they are. So they're really interested to know how you're contributing to the field. So they will ask you minute details. Of course, they're also judging whether you are actually involved. I think Shan said that, they want to know how much you are actually involved, or is just your name on the research projects. In many of my interviews, I can recall that I was asked specifically, what did you contribute to this project? And that whether it's just something like data collection, a small thing, be honest with your answer. Say that, yeah, okay, I just did data collection, but it helps, because you are still contributing in a way. You might not be doing groundbreaking work yourself, but you are part of a bigger project, and at the end of the day, it shows that you are good. You're working as a team. You're contributing to something, even though you're not getting full credit for it. And if during the course of your interviews you have certain publications that get accepted, or certain posters that get accepted, bring those up also in the interview. For me, I had a poster I had an abstract that was submitted and accepted after I sent in my application. So I mentioned that as well. I brought out, and they asked me, they're like, okay, how it was a case report. They specifically asked me, okay, what did you do in this case report? How did you see the patient? Basically, they want to know whether it's just, were you involved completely in this project, or is it just something that your attending gave you and you just wrote it up? So I think that was important. That being said, I was also asked about some of my U.S. clinical experience, because it was in a variety of places. They used to ask me what my responsibilities were, because they want to know how involved you were as a team member, because they know the limitations you have as an observership as well. So they want to know what you did on your part to be a part of a team and to contribute and to learn, even in that limited role.
Thank you. Before I come to George, you and Shrey and Diana on your experiences, let me go to Shayan, because I think he really had lots and lots of research. And how did you balance that research in USC, Shayan?
Yeah. So for me, I did research for 2.5 years, and along with that, initially I didn't have much of my USCE. I started doing my research. At the time, the point I realized when I went to the interview, they were saying that you do miss USC, and it's been a while that you have been out of the med school. So that kind of hinted me, hey, it's time to do an USC as well. So now the balance between research and USC was very critical to me, because my research mentors were different from my clinical persons with whom I was rotating. So I cannot compromise either of them. So if I had to commit to the clinical rotation, which is very difficult to get in while you are doing research, so I'll be better at that. I do come at time. If they are asking, then take the patient notes. Sometimes I was not allowed, so what I did, I took the help of the medical student to go with them and take down the history while they were asking the questions, because I was not allowed for the physical examination. But then with the request, they allowed me, hey, you can present one case a day. Okay, and that was really a great opportunity for me. I utilized to it as an advantage. But at the same time, when I was done, I made sure that, I also complete my research work, because I need to report to my mentor every week. So I better be good at that game as well. So these two was difficult to balance, but yeah, you can always make a strategy and balance it out, and people really appreciate it. And after that, I tried to relate my clinical work with my research by doing QI projects. So when the time of interview came and they were asking me, and I agree with Yash and Nimit that, you need to explain your position and like how it's going to help you in the clinical setting. So for example, when I was explaining in a community hospital, I took the example of QA project, and they definitely asked on that. So I said, this is my cost-effective analysis I have done. So these are the loopholes which we are currently facing. So though it's a single center study, but I believe it's pretty much all over the US. So if we are taking this and this strategy, this much financial gain will be for the hospital, this much gain would be for the patient, and that's how we're going to improve the healthcare system, provide a better healthcare thing with a reduced cost. So they understood that this person has an overview, this person know what he is doing and can have a transferable skill set which can be brought into the clinical practice. So when I went to a university program, so they were basically asking me about the broad aspects of the research in terms of how you see it, what is the foresee, your hypothesis, how did you come with the hypothesis, and the way it was never a straightforward question. So it's not like you just mug up and go there. You need to really understand. Even if you are just a part of the team, you have a lot to contribute in the research. Like start from data collection. Like with data collection, I explained them how I could understand the pattern, following the pattern, each and everything, writing a manuscript. And this showed I didn't have to say that I'm a team people's person. I have my analytical skills. They only said that, you do have this skills. So it was like when they asked me about the strength, I took an example, I kept on explaining them. So I think that was really a big deal breaker for me. Instead of just saying the qualities, I did have a great examples to explain them. So, and whenever they asked me about the clinical experience, they did ask me, like, you have shown that you are doing clinical experience as well as the research. How did you manage it? Like Pawan asked me, the same question was being asked twice in the interview. So I was very clearly, I was able to explain what was my role. And they wanted to know, are you overcommitting yourself? That's something, and you are not able to meet the target. So that's pretty much a red flag here. So I would suggest to any person, like, make sure that you don't overcommit and can't do. You can always ask for the deadline, that's fine. There were times like when I was supposed to rotate at my medicine team, but I had a lot of other work. I had deadlines for submission of my manuscript. So I said them, today I won't be able to do, and they really appreciated that. So having an open communication, clear communication on day-to-day basis is really liked by everyone. If they don't think that you are superhuman, we are just an applicant, they would understand our situation. But unless until you're openly communicating with them, they probably will be waiting for you even to start the rounds. So I think these are certain things. If we all keep in mind, our CVs are going to be great, our experience are going to be great, and we can really explain them in our interviews. So yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Shan. So I know that George is answering a lot of questions on USC. Let me go to Deanna and then Shrey on what type of questions around USC or lack of research did you guys get? So Deanna, how did you balance, people telling you didn't have either research or USC? How did you balance this?
So I started my research in September, right beginning of September, and I did not have any USCE at the moment. And right before my interviews, I was talking with Pawan, and he was telling me, just keep on looking, just keep on asking for USCE, you will get it. And I kept on doing that. I'm living in California, and I talked with a lot of doctors here. Some doctors that I know, and they just said, we can't take you, at least if you were not graduate student, but you were a student, not a graduate. And I kept on getting rejections. So I kept on looking, and then I finally found a lady that said, just come shadow me in January. So I held on to that, and when I went to my interviews, I was telling them, I'm still looking, but hey, I have something. I have a promise that I will start shadowing in January. So even if you don't have it, just cling to something that you have, a promise at least, as I did. And that's how I tackled it, because I was very involved in the research, and all the questions that were about research were easy for me. But then when it came to the USCE, it was the lack of it that I had to handle, and it was the truth. I came to them with the truth because that was it. I couldn't do much about it.
Okay. And Shrey, what type of questions did you get? Whether USC or research or lack of one or the other? I think you had elective, so probably it was okay.
Sure.
So, first of all, I would say that whenever you go for the interviews, the program directors want to see you as a resident more than as a researcher in my internal medicine residency thing. So I definitely make sure that I have enough USC clinical electives experience so that I can show my strong application to them. Secondly, I would say that 3 electives is very much adequate to go through the internal medicine residency match. Doing more than 3 will add a little bit, but not that much. But at least you should do 3 electives in that period. Preferably go for the hands-on compared to the observerships. And as you say, it should be better if you have a waived LOR. Third thing, so I have a shortage of time. So meanwhile, I thought that what should I do for the research. So during that period of time, I contacted my medical school faculties if I can join them for research thing from the hometown, from the other part. So one of the faculties answered positively, and I worked with them for a research project. And fortunately, it was by the time the application time came, the project has been submitted to the journal. So I made sure that I have every bits of pieces in every part of my CV. So because it will help you to make your CV stronger, and it's much more better if you have an average score or low score. But even if you have competitive scores, make sure you have contribution to each of your parts. And after my research got submitted, I also did a poster presentation on that same topic, and later I got an opportunity to go for a conference. And in that period of time, I also did a poster presentation that also added a value in my CV. So I make sure that everything has been added into my CV so that it looks appealing and it appears as that you are a well-rounded resident so that they can take you into your program.
Good. Thank you. So George, I want you to take it next, talk about, if you have to, about this research USC balance. But the more critical question, I think, for all the applicants at this point is the COVID-19 pandemic, whether they are in home country or in the US. So once you start, what your thoughts are, what they should be doing, I'll go around the virtual table and, get some thoughts from our panelists as well. How do they think students should handle this unanticipated situation? So why don't you start and then we'll go around.
Thank you. Yes, so as Pawan mentioned, the first thing is it is unanticipated. So everything that you might have planned for this year might not work. So that's why you might totally need a completely different approach. I'm looking at the poll, and a lot of people are doing US research, US USC, and some small proportion are working in home country and doing remote research. I don't know what others in the other category are doing, but yeah, everybody's doing something. So the important thing here is, first and foremost, you have to be safe. Don't put yourself into situations where you feel like you have to do something just for the sake of your application. Okay, so be safe. That's the first thing. Second thing is, if you're already in a research position in the United States, you will not be kicked out. You will not have to leave. It's pretty much whatever your institution is doing, you will continue to follow their guidelines. So continue to work as much as possible. Many people in this group are in research and they're doing work from home, so continue to do whatever that is. Second, if you're in your home country and cannot travel to the United States, contact your own, university, contact your university hospitals, contact faculty seniors in your hometown, home country itself, and see if you can approach them for research opportunities there itself. Because right now, clinical opportunities might be limited even in your home country. I don't know how the situation is, but research is always, you can at least attempt to do remote research. By remote research, we mean things that probably don't involve clinical data or patient data. So it involves writing
review articles, or if you're familiar with systematic reviews and doing that, or sometimes you might get some case reports, things that you can write from faculty in your medical school. So it doesn't matter what it is, as long as you're doing something productive with that time. And there are people who, even after you do remote research, are willing to give you letters of recommendation just because of your performance with them. Even though they might not have met you face-to-face, there are people, even in the United States, who will do the same thing. So not just home country research, if you have the opportunity to contact faculty in the United States who are doing research, who are involved in policy making, or who are involved in a lot of academics, contact them and, tell them who you are. Tell them that you are a residency applicant. You are an international medical graduate with so-and-so. Attach your CV and tell them that you are interested in doing some form of remote research and you want to contribute to whatever research they're doing in whatever limitations they have. So U.S. research, home country research, and any home country, USC, if possible. Next thing is there might be a lot of voluntary activities happening in your home country itself. There might be outreach activities or volunteering activities, keeping a balance of your own safety, of course. Try to get involved in that. Try to spearhead things on your own. It doesn't matter what you do. Your volunteer experience does not really have to be a medical thing. All it matters is something that you're doing that is meaningful, and then you can talk about it in your interview. Because if, for example, during my interview, I had close to 15 or so experiences in my volunteer experiences. One interviewer asked me specifically just about my volunteer experiences. She asked me, okay, you did this from this time, you did this from this time. So you need to know specifically what you did and, and how you contributed, and be passionate about the work you do. People see a lot of that passion in your interviews, and that is why you're doing all these things, right? You're doing it not just as a filler for your application. You're doing it because you want to do it and you feel satisfied, you feel accomplished doing that, and that is what you need to show in your interviews. And I think probably in a couple of months when things settle down, continue to apply for research here, and as many people here have done it, apply for research here and secure a position, and from your research position try to do observerships or try to do rotations within. I think that would be the easiest method as of now, other than applying for rotations itself, because more people might be wary in getting international grads for doing rotations there. Even many electives, a lot of observerships, except for a few clinics, have been closed. So it's a really tricky situation. I think research, personally, I think research is the way to go once situation gets a little bit better. The third thing is, just to add on to what everyone else has said, yes, research is important. Yes, home country residency, yes, advanced degrees, all of these are important. But know when it is important. That's very important. A lot of people try to dive into research just because everyone else is doing it, okay? There are people who message on Facebook and this and that saying, I finished my step 1, now how do I get research? That is not the answer. You need to finish your step 1, step 2, try to get the best scores, because there are fresh graduates who have high scores within the 260s who get in even without research, get into good programs without research. So make sure you have the prerequisites before, make sure you have your scores, you have your complete application, you have at least 3 US LORs or at least 2 US LORs, and USCE, because primarily programs are looking for a clinician first than an academic researcher. Primary programs are looking for it, especially internal medicine programs. So make sure you have those things and then go on to research if you want to, or step 3 if you want to build up your application and make it stronger should you not match in that season. So know the importance, that is very important. And additionally, just to add on to why research is important, in addition to everything that everyone has said, it's good for your interviews, etc., etc. But also, you get a lot of updates during your application season. You might get a poster accepted, you might get a publication, you might get something accepted, or any of those things. All of these are excuses to update programs. All of these are legit excuses to actually email your programs and say, hey, my abstract is accepted. Just wanted to update you. I love what I do. I just wanted to share this good news with you. Finished. So in that way, there are a lot of people who get 1 or 2 interviews or even rejections. That's fine, as long as programs review your application and you're not in limbo. So that is how all of these things will help you.